So we're going to step aside now from some of those tools and exercises just to get us on the same page. And we're going to backfill a little bit of context conceptually for why we're here. But that did a couple of things. We got to meet everybody. We got everybody hopefully in now into the stuff. So it'll help us with the other exercises. And hopefully you have a rough feel for what Brat is trying to do. And now we're going to go and sort of reconstruct why we need some of that and do some exercises so that we better understand it. Any questions or comments at this point? Alden, anything to add?
Nope, I think that we got a few people hopped in, but I think that if you're on and you're jumped in late and trying to get accounts, just message Philip Bailey directly and they'll help you.
And for anybody that's, you know, getting overwhelmed and lost at any point, just remember that the web page for the webinar that you all found because you had the Zoom link, if you go on the preparation, if you're showing up late, this is the exercise we did. We just created an account by clicking on that link, and then we filled out a form and got ourselves access. Okay, so that's all we've really done. Okay. So our motivation for wanting to understand Brat is really about healthy riverscapes. And a lot of you have probably been on, either, workshops with me or with other folks, and you play this game of closing your eyes and imagining a river. I'm not going to make you do that right now, but, one of the things a lot of us in sort of, riverscape world like to do is point out that a lot of the things that people imagine are exactly what you would find in an Orvis, catalog, and a nice little single thread, mountain stream or meandering channel. But most people, unless they've been corrupted, like many of you have, what's coming to mind is not necessarily these cluttered messes. And beaver are obviously one of the main sort of drivers of in many landscapes of some of those cluttered messes. We have a lot of riverscapes. Many of you will have seen these slides, and we spend a lot of money trying to improve their health. However, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of how far that money goes relative to the scope of degradation. So our premise is that most of us generally want the same things for some of our rivers and streams, and want them and the ecosystems and communities that depend on them to be healthy. We may respectfully disagree on the best way to get there. And a lot of times those can be disagreements, from the pro-beaver, camp and the anti-beaver camps, about how we get there. And so what we're trying to do is, with Brat, have a little bit more civilized discussion to navigate some of that space with regards to with or without beaver dam activity. I think everybody's intentions in the sort of restoration conservation business are good, but one of the reasons we've all been so excited about beaver dam activity is if you can engage that process, it's not only more cost effective, it's potentially more self-sustaining and can expand far beyond the footprint of where you can afford to treat. And Brat can help us with some of the expectations for that. So restoration, our actions are often better to think of like, if you have somebody who, is fighting a cold or is unhealthy and you're trying to, nurse them back to health, maybe you would give them some soup. Maybe you would prepare a meal for them. If there's some other bigger issues, fitness, out of shape, a lot of other underlying problems, those may, take longer, right? And we really should think about our restoration actions like offering a meal to a sick patient. It's gonna take, maybe, getting over the immediate cold, as well as, you know, a healthy diet and exercise to bring ourselves back to health. And what we're really interested in are self-sustaining ways in which we engage natural processes, as opposed to completely unsustainable methods that only work for the design storm that I designed up to. Like, oh, well, I designed this thing not to move up to a 100-year storm event, and I could tell you it's going to look exactly like that, and it's a look I really like. Oh, but whoops, I didn't design for over 100, so yeah, I don't know. That's your problem. I don't know what's going to happen after that. That sort of mentality that has been pervasive in the restoration business is what many folks that are interested in process-based restoration are trying to push back against. Lots of ways we can visualize this, you know, whether these are streams that have experienced degradation in more arid settings, in deceptively lush settings, but that are really just structurally starved of the structure of wood and beaver dams, bowling alleys. You know, I think that there's a collective agreement that that ain't right, right? And there's also been a collective awakening, and I think better articulation over the past 10, 15 years within the sort of riverscape science community of understanding the role that biology, not just geology, geomorphology, and hydrology play, but in creating these messier riverscapes that are what were once so pervasive, and we've just shifted baselines so much we sort of forgot what these things are. And it turns out, and Ben does a nice job of this in his book Eager, in pointing out just how pervasive these things were. And there's a line in Eager where he actually talks about Brat and what he describes Brat as. Does anybody remember this line? He basically says it's sort of a time machine to take us back to the castor scene, he calls it, right? To try to imagine what these riverscapes could be. And when you start doing that in a defensible manner, you start realizing just how pervasive. Also, when you start going back and reading old trappers' accounts, accounts from native tribes, etc., that, you know, many more riverscapes were much messier. Not every riverscape, but many more. And so Brat is going to be about helping us understand that. When we talk about riverscapes, we've had a chronic problem in communication when we talk about rivers, where we've been too channel focused. We talk about a river or we talk about a stream, but we're mainly focused on the channel. And then it comes verbose. So, well, rivers and their floodplains. But what most people mean by that is, well, what's still an active floodplain? What's still semi-regularly flooding and supporting riparian vegetation? And the bottom line is that most of our riverscapes in the West have been dramatically altered. And the space that is space we should be looking at, where we consider risk, for example, from beaver, and opportunities, again, for example, from beaver, but other processes as well, is much bigger than the remnant floodplains and ditches of channels that are often left behind. So this definition that the riverscape is the part of the landscape that could plausibly flood in the contemporary natural flow regime, it gives us a window into looking at the realm of what's possible, what still could be possible. And we've dramatically underestimated what's been lost and what's been sold, or what's possible here. So part of what we're doing is trying to get a better handle on that. A number of us have been working on ways to sort of distill what the science has been telling us. These were some principles we've been running with for a while. We actually had a summit last week and got some good advice on ways to, you know, tailor these even better. But originally we had streams need space. How much space they need, that's just reading a riverscape and identifying a valley bottom. that structure forces complexity, builds resilience. And so that it is these beaver dams that we're going to talk about. And that builds a carbon fiber matrix of more complex habitat that is more resilient to disturbances like fires, floods, and droughts. And we had this kind of it depends or context matters sort of get out of jail card thing. And then this inefficient conveyance of water is healthy idea. The suggestion here, and this is also antithetical to how we've managed riverscapes. The suggestion from last week is we could distill this down to, well, context always matters, but healthy riverscapes need space and they need water. Healthy riverscapes need natural structure, and healthy riverscapes need connectivity, which is often actually the inefficient conveyance of mass, water, sediment, nutrients, wood, everything through these systems. And so that's kind of the distillation of recognizing what healthy looks like. So what we've tried to do here is just remind ourselves that we've got a lot of riverscapes that don't meet these criteria. They are unhealthy, they are impacted. And we have a lot of reasons to want to improve their health. And this is some of what we are trying to focus on in a lot of the efforts. I'm going to pause there for a second. Alden, anything to add or to highlight? This is just making sure that we have the setup clear before we start diving into the questions that we're trying to ask in Brett.
No, I like the way that you've taken it. I know that, you know, a lot of the way that we've considered and assessed our streams and rivers or riverscapes in the past has been, you know, a departure from some of these concepts. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to the rest of our field offices and our folks is that I think in order to get to the next phase of where we're trying to go as a program and as land managers, and involves incorporation of these concepts, and that's where Brett aligns. And so I think that, you know, I don't have much to add to it other than that I think some of you guys may be thinking through how we've been assessing things in the past and how these concepts may differ a little bit. And I think that's good. I hope you are thinking those things, and also considering how some of those align and how this really is more of an extension than a replacement of those concepts.
Yeah, well put, especially on that last point.